Hello, BookTube. This is the 3 Loved Rereads Tag. Now, I thought I was done with videos today. I did 2, which is pretty good for me. Then I was watching Steve Donahue, and he did this tag. And it got me to thinking, 2008. Now, in 2008, I wasn't in my 30s. In 2008, I was in my 40s. 1998. I'm not going to tell you what decade we have to go back for me to be in my 20s, but it was a long time ago. But this was created by Amy from Poly Reader. And then, of course, like I said, I saw it on Steve's channel, and I thought, when I watched it, I thought, what books do I have left from 2008? I try to keep most of my books, if I like them. You know, it's a mixed bag. But. So I picked up my trusty old record book. These are the pages. So what do I have left? And so I'm changing this up a little bit. And what 3 would I want to reread at the end? So I'll put them in a separate pile as I go through them. And I'm going to go backwards in the order that I read them. So it must have been a year where I was reading a lot of M.C. Beaton. So I notice I have none of those left. So those wouldn't be the types of books I would keep, but I would enjoy. So the last book I read in 2008 was Death of a Maid by M.C. Beaton. And then I read this. One of my favorite authors, Douglas Riemann. And that was A Prayer for the Ship. And it's a motor torpedo boats, World War II. And one of my all-time favorites. So it's one I'd strongly recommend. This one, I believe, is a McBooks Press. Yes, it is. It's also a publisher I strongly recommend. It's a small publisher, does nautical fiction. And, yeah. Check out their website. They have a wonderful newsletter, which I've mentioned before. And if you like nautical fiction, they're the way to go. And prior to that, I read, and it still has a sticker on it, oddly enough, and I usually don't allow that to happen, one of the Bernard Cornwell Saxon tales, and this one's Sword Song, The Battle for London. And I do own the entire series. It's one I strongly recommend if you like historical adventure novels. And you'll see Cornwell on this list again. And then another maritime fiction. So far I've only had one that I don't own anymore. And this one here is Julian Stockwin, and it's Kid. Absolutely love these. And this is a series that's along the lines of C.S. Forester. Maybe not quite so much of a Patrick O'Brian, but fun. Very enjoyable. And I've read a lot of them. There are a lot of them. And those you could also, I believe, get through McBooks Press. And then the next one I don't have. So we have another one I don't have, and that's Books, a Memoir by Larry McMurtry. I'd love to have a copy of that book. And then there's a couple more I don't have. Port Hazard by Lauren D. Esselman and White Desert by Lauren D. Esselman, another author I really enjoy. And then another one I don't have. Fool's Paradise by John Gierach, and I don't even remember that one. But doesn't mean it was bad, just means I don't have it anymore. Another one I don't have, Rendezvous by Richard S. Wheeler, which I remember enjoying very much. Now this next one I have copies out of, and some very nice first editions actually, out of the series, but I don't have this. And if you like adventure and you like humor, so I cannot recommend this strongly enough. And this is Flashman by George MacDonald Fraser. It's a bit of a send up to Empire. It seems incredibly politically incorrect, but there's a little edge underneath there, and he's trying to make a point, but he does it in such a wonderful way. Absolutely wonderful writer. And then the next one, I don't know how many copies I have of this, in different editions, but The next thing I read, backwards, we're going backwards, was The Hobbit by Tolkien. And then another M.C. Baton, Agatha Raisin and the Haunted House. Wasn't much of a fan of the Agatha Raisin. I didn't hate him, but it wasn't my thing. And then a pile of M.C. Baton. Death of a Dentist, Death of an Addict, Death of a Nag. I enjoyed them all. But I don't own any of them anymore, so I, for some reason, decided not to keep them. Space, I believe. Then another Bernard Cornwell, Sharpe's Battle. Of all Cornwell's work, and I enjoy most of it, the Sharpe novels to me are just wonderful. Military, adventure, historical novels, hard to beat. Then Kathy Reich's Crossbones. I don't own it anymore. And then In the Heart of the Sea by Nathaniel Philbrook, which I absolutely love. This is nonfiction, of course. And this is a tragedy of the whale ship Essex. It's been made into the movie. I have not seen the movie. And then another nonfiction. And that, again, is a nautical theme. This is Patriot Pirates, The Privateer War for Freedom and Fortune in the American Revolution by Robert H. Patton. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful book. I got a little bit of glare going on here because we have all the windows closed and blinds down and the lights on, so it's a little, lighting's not so great. But the next one is Royal Yankee by Victor Southern. This is nautical fiction. I really enjoyed this, and I've never run into any of his. I know he had other sea adventures, but I've never run into any. If I ever saw him, I would pick him up. Then a Michael Chabon. Many of you remember him from Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, but this one here is Gentlemen of the Road, so I still have this one. And then another of his Maps and Legends, which I do not have. And the next one I don't have anymore either, and that's Firelight and Woodsmoke by Claude Michelet. I believe that was a translated volume. Then another one of my favorite authors. This is Sin Killer by Larry McMurtry. Many of you remember him from Lonesome Dove. Gotta have a little wet my whistle here. And then, if you need to relax, and you need to laugh, and you need a good story, again, I can't recommend it highly enough. These are a little escape for me, and that's Rumpole and the Peng Bungalow Murders by John Mortimer. And you'll get to meet She Who Must Be Obeyed. And then, another nonfiction. We go to Thomas Fleming, Washington's Secret War, The Hidden History of Valley Forge. Enjoyed it. And then one I don't have, and I want to say something about this. I read a little bit of Stuart Woods that year. And they are good escape and all that. But he did a nonfiction book that you don't hear about as much. It's called Blue Water, Green Skipper, where he single-handedly took a sailboat across the Atlantic. And I wish I did still. I gave it to a friend and it sort of disappeared, as happens occasionally. Wonderful book. Next one was The Enemy by Lee Child. So this was in 2008, so I'm not sure how far that was into the Jack Reacher series, but I remember enjoying it. And then the next one, which I still do have, and that is The French and Indian War, Deciding the Fate of North America by Walter R. Bornemann. Really good. And then the next one's by one of my favorite hacks. And I say that with the utmost respect, because it's people who can write. They can, for a dollar bill or a pound or a euro or whatever it would be in Mr. Aykroyd's case, they can meet a deadline. They can put together a book. They can entertain you. And in his case, they can synthesize a subject, and they're worth they're worth reading. And this one's among his many that I've read. Is one of his wonderful ones. This is called Albion. Peter Ackroyd. The Origins of the English Imagination. And I'd strongly recommend it to anybody who's an Anglophile. And then see if I can move these, because the pile continues. We're making progress, though. So the next one I also have, and you see here, is an old copy. Excuse me. A lot of dust on these. Some of these have been on the shelves for a while. This is The King Must Die. It's by Mircea Eliade. This is a Pantheon book. And when this came out, 1958. So there's no dust jacket. It probably had a very nice dust jacket at one time. And then another nonfiction. Alan Pell Crawford's Twilight at Monticello, The Final Years of Thomas Jefferson. And we're on a run here because I have this one too. This is Solomon Volkov. Now, he's a bit of a controversial figure. Not everybody likes him. This is a magical chorus. I spent quite a while in Russia, and my timing was really strange because I got there right when the coup happened, and with Yeltsin and all that. So it gave me an appreciation for Russia and a curiosity about Russia. And Volkov is in many books, especially his book about St. Petersburg. I've learned a lot from him. But The Magical Chorus, A History of Russian Culture from Tolstoy to Solzhenitsyn. Another one of his volumes that I really enjoyed. And then the next one I also have, and this is Fusiliers, The Saga of a British Redcoat Regiment in the American Revolution by Mark Urban. And the next one I also have is The Judgment of Paris by Ross King, The Revolutionary Decade That Gave the World Impressionism. Then let's see here, where are we at here? And then All the Brave Fellows by James L. Nelson. This is a nautical fiction about the American Revolution. I really like his, he's doing quite a bit with Viking stuff now. This guy is a good writer. He writes wonderful history, and he writes wonderful historical fiction with a maritime flair, and he was a real sailor, so really strongly recommend him. And then we have, sort of in the Dan Brown sort of type of genre, Steve Barry. This one's The Alexandria Link. Good thrillers, enjoy them. And then getting back to Nelson, who I just mentioned, here's one of his nonfiction works. I don't have Dust Jacket anymore. This is Benedict Arnold's Navy, a wonderful, wonderful story about ragtag fleet that lost the Battle of Lake Champlain but won the American Revolution. And it's just a fascinating, well-researched volume. So I would strongly recommend that. And then we get to one of my heroes, Julia Child, My Life in France. This is a fun book. The cook from, this is done with Alex Prudhomme. Came out in 2006. She just changed how we eat. She changed how America thinks about eating. And this is just a fantastic read. If you're at all interested in food, American culture, French culture, how people react to another culture. And I find her to be very admirable. So then we go to one I no longer have. I have some of this fellow's other books, and this is Ferenc Mate. This one's A Vineyard in Tuscany, A Wine Lover's Dream. And Ferenc Mate has written some wonderful fiction. He's written some wonderful books, maritime books, nonfiction. And now with the whole Italian, and he has a home in a vineyard in Italy. I don't have any more. I have one of his others, but actually, if I ever see a copy, I'll pick it up again. A wonderful, wonderful writer. Then another thriller, Daniel Silva. This is The Messenger. It's Gabrielle Alone, who is a art restorer and a spy. Very fun. Very much enjoy them. And then a couple of ones I no longer have. I don't have I love Farley Mowat, the Canadian writer. Have since I was a young man. Bay of Spirits, a love story. I no longer have that. Another Stuart Woods, Cold Paradise. I probably had it as a paperback and just read it and sent it on to somebody else. Enjoyed it. Then there's beautiful British cover for Treasure of Con by Clive Cussler. Absolutely love this if you're into thrillers. Actually, if you can get these covers. The British, they know how to make thriller covers. And book covers in general. Then another nonfiction, David McCullough, 1776. Great story about the American Revolution. Then one about Benedict Arnold's march to Quebec in 1775 through a howling wilderness. And this is by Thomas A. Desjardins. Really good book, short, but a good book. And then, let's see here, Mayflower. This is a Nathaniel Philbrook, an author and a historian I really enjoy. We saw him earlier, talking about the whale ship Essex. This is Mayflower. So, have quite a few of his books, and I enjoy him quite a bit. Then the next one, I don't have anymore, and this I had it in a paperback. I actually ended up giving it to my library, but it's really interesting, as Farley Mowat usually is. And that's The Farfarers Before the Norse. And it's about Albion, and it's quite interesting if you ever run into it. A lot of his stuff is. And then the first book I read in 2008 was Mircea Eliade, A History of Religious Ideas, from the Stone Age to the Eleusinian Mysteries, translated by Willard R. Trask. If you're into the history of religion, if you're into anthropology and archaeology, this is quite a book. It's a 3-volume set from Chicago, University of Chicago Press. So those are the books I read. But the whole idea here is, what 3 would you reread? So now I look at them. I'd probably reread any of them. I'm going to pick first of all is The Julia Child. So that would be number 1. Number 2, and anything in this series, the James L. Nelson, Revolutionary War Maritime Fiction. And then I think anything in the Rumpole mysteries. So, but I kept these because they were good books. So, thank you, Steve. I know I sort of altered the tag a little bit. Hopefully not too bad. So if anybody else out there has a list of what you read in 2008, and you are of a certain age where you were reading in 2008, I'd love to see it. Let me know in the comments below if you do it. Thank you, BookTube.